Привет всем, с вами я, Janey, и это How Janey Learned Russian, and you can too. We are continuing our unit on the genitive singular, and today we are continuing this concept of 2, 3, 4 needing genitive singular. So remember, I always told you be careful when you say numbers in Russian because they're gonna force genitive case and then things just get really complicated. So 2, 3, 4 have their own set of rules. They get genitive singular afterward. And yesterday we also talked about the number 2 having a masculine version and a feminine version. And then the number 1 has all 4 versions. Один, одно, одна, одни. Today we are going to be pretending like we got to furnish our house. We just moved in Moscow and there is nothing and we've got to go in and do a Dom Meuble and go ahead and buy everything that we need. Most likely you need multiple chairs around your table, right? Like, I mean, hopefully you're not just sitting there by yourself all the time. So we're going to pretend like we're in a store buying furniture and we'll be working from the textbook. So real quick, let's review what we talked about yesterday. Take a moment and tell me how many windows are in your room. Окно. Сколько окон у тебя в комнате? У меня много, к сожалению. У меня 6 окон. So hopefully, I don't know, maybe you have 2 окна, 3 окна, 4 окна. What if you only have 1 window? How would you say that? Одно окно. What if you don't have any windows? I gave it away in my question, how many windows? Нет окон. And that gets into our genitive plural, which we'll get into later, which is one of the hardest parts of the cases. Next, how many couches are in your room where you're sitting right now? Здесь сколько диванов? Здесь нет диванов, да? Но в нашем доме у нас 3 больших дивана. Нет, это ложь. У нас 1 маленький диван и 2 больших дивана. Да, то есть это sectionals. У нас 2 больших дивана. Okay? How many beds are in your room or your house? В моей комнате 1 большая кровать. А в доме, я даже не знаю, 8, может быть. Да. So maybe you have 1 кровать, 2 кровати, 3 кровати, 4 кровати, 5 кроватей, etc. Televisions, телевизоры. Сколько телевизоров у тебя есть в комнате? У меня 1 большой телевизор в комнате. А в доме даже не знаю сколько. Я даже не скажу. Стыдно. Потому что слишком стыдно. Okay, хорошо. So that was our review. Remember this 2, 3, 4. And take a minute and tell me how old you are. Okay? So remember the rule. If you end in a 1, you're going to get год. If your age ends in 2, 3, 4, but not teens, 12, 13, 14, that gets genitive plural. So if your age ends in 2, 3, 4, you're going to get года. And then 5 and above, or ending in a 0, gets лет. Мне 42 года. А вам сколько лет? Мне 42 года. Вот. Окей, это все. Сейчас мы перейдем к нашему интересному кусочку информации дня. Okay? 3 интересных факта из жизни Андрея Арсеньевича Тарковского. Okay, so yesterday I talked about that beautiful movie, Andrei Rublev, and the director of it is this Andrei Tarkovsky. He is so brilliant. He's just gorgeous. Like, his movies are just so gorgeous, and anybody who loves film really should know Tarkovsky. His cinematography is just stunning. Everything, you could just freeze it and frame it and put it on your wall. It's so gorgeous. So let's talk about him. So he was the director of Andrei Rublev, which we talked about yesterday. But then you also might know him. Some of his most famous ones are Stalker and Solaris. Yeah. Зеркало is just like, again, visually, it's just so beautiful. It's like everything that I love about Russia, just like the colors in it and everything. So yeah, he's kind of famous for this kind of weaving in and out of like dreamish slash, real life. And it's extremely beautiful. And then he does use color and black and white film kind of strategically and symbolically in his movies. What's interesting though is he left in so he became pretty renowned during the Soviet Union, and a lot of famous directors loved him, such as Lars von Trier, Ingmar Bergman. Like he was on people's radar in Europe. Anyway, so he went to a film festival in Italy, and then from there tried to ask for asylum, and he did not want to return back to the Soviet Union. So he ended up being a refugee in Italy as well. And so, yeah, so that was the end of Andrei Tarkovsky, which I highly recommend. If you're a film lover, you got to check it out. A lot of directors were highly influenced by him. So, okay, хорошо. Today's lesson is based on my textbook, Russian Cases Made Slightly Less Scary, available over on my Patreon. And as I said, as a celebration of my other book on verbs that I recently finished, there is currently a promo code going called I Love Verbs, which will get you 20% off this right now. So head on over. The link is in the description. Also, I do offer group classes. This is a really great way to hold yourself accountable and come to class every week, sometimes twice a week, and practice what you've been learning on your own. And we have a fun little community. Like everybody gets along, we're laughing. It's always a super fun time to learn about each other's hometowns, and we're doing all of this in Russian. So I highly recommend joining up with those group classes as well. Okay, so what we're doing now is this little activity in the textbook, and I'm just going to do it here on the screen, but then there's going to be a kind of a dialogue that we'll switch to in the textbook here in just a minute. So remember, anytime you're telling me a number, most of the time you're going to have to use genitive case. You're either going to have to use genitive singular or you're going to have to use genitive plural. Now, a word like сколько, how many, is going to force genitive plural. So you're going to get a little preview. Spoiler alert, you're about to see how complicated genitive plural endings are. You're going to get a little preview of how genitive plural looks just in these questions, right? Сколько ламп, сколько стульев, сколько кресел, сколько кроватей, сколько картин, сколько чашек, сколько зеркал. Okay? But your answer will always use genitive singular, just FYI, or nominative singular. So let's go ahead and practice answering the question, how many of these things do we have? So, например, so actually, let's do this. Let's first go through the store and we'll just list off what there is, okay? Например, в нашем магазине у нас есть стол, у нас есть диваны, у нас есть кресла, у нас есть картины, чашки, лампы, зеркало, ковер и кровати. И это, по-моему, все. Диваны я уже сказала, может быть. So if we're just saying there is this, the second we add in numbers, stuff gets complicated. Okay, let's get ready. Сколько ламп в этом магазине? Сколько ламп? Okay, so how would you answer me? There are two lamp. Okay, so lampa is feminine. Lampa. So how would you tell me there are two lamps? В магазине две лампы. Одна голубая, другая желтая. Да, то есть следующий. Сколько стульев? Сколько стульев? So, в магазине 1, 2, 3, 4 стула. Стула, not стулья, стула. Okay? What if you wanted to say there's 4 gray chairs? Do you remember what happens to our adjectives? 4 серых стула. 4 серых стула в этом магазине. Сколько кресел? Okay, то есть это кресло, like an armchair. Okay? И какого цвета? That's how you ask what color something is. Of what color is what you're literally saying. Да, какого цвета эти кресла? Здесь 3 кресла. Да, два голубых кресла и одно черное кресло. Окей? Дальше. Сколько кроватей? Они большие или маленькие? Окей. В магазине. Okay, so кровать is feminine. So what needs to happen to our number 2? В магазине 2 кровати. Now tell me one is big and one is small. Одна большая, одна маленькая. Вот так, okay? So remember, those numbers also need to get gender as well. And I have the worst news for you. Numbers also get cases. Oh, it's so brutal. Двух, двумя, двум. But don't you worry about that. That's like super advanced. That's later. Okay, хорошо. Сколько картин в этом магазине? So картина was the original. What happens to feminines in genitive singular? Hint, it sounds exactly like nominative plurals. 3 картины. 3 картины в этом магазине. Да? Следующий. Сколько чашек? Сколько чашек? Вот чашки. Вот чашки. Сколько чашек? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. So tell me there are 4 teacups. 4 чашки. Есть 4 чашки в этом магазине. Все. Окей, хорошо. Сейчас перейдем в наш учебник. И сейчас поработаем в учебнике. Сейчас. Okay, so remember how I told you that just because we're currently working on genitive case does not mean prepositional and accusative case have ceased to exist. I promise you, all of this stuff that we're learning is gonna come back in handy again and again and again. So you need to keep it in your brain. You can't just be like, phew, we're done with accusative. I never need that again. Nope, not true. It just, like, all of those cases are going to come in handy, and we're going to do a little dialogue right now that's going to make you have to go back and remember prepositional case and nominative and accusative, just to prove my point that the cases always come in handy. All of them. You're going to need all of them all the time. Okay, хорошо, поехали. So let's start working in the book here. Okay, so we're in a magazine, and we're having a conversation with the salesperson in magazine. There's an example. Oh, I can't speak in any language. Duh. What? So you're talking with the salesperson in the furniture store, and you're just kind of having a little conversation back and forth. So we want to be able to say, we got to put the things in parentheses into the necessary case. Okay, so the client comes into the magazine and says, Добрый день, в something, ваш магазин есть мебель? So we want to be able to say, do you have furniture in your store? In your store, do you have furniture, мебель? And they say, so we got to go, Добрый день, в вашем magazine. Yeah, this is going back to prepositional case. Woohoo! And then есть. Do you have it? The thing you have doesn't change. It gets nominative case. So есть мебель. Вот. Okay? Дальше. Then the продавец, he says, ну да, магазин называется все для дома. Да? Yeah, it's called everything for the house. So obviously we have furniture. And then he says, что вы хотите? Does что need to change? Now, in разговорный Russian, you might actually hear a чего or a чё if they're kind of rude. But no, что does not need to change. So что just goes there. Что вы хотите? Да? Дальше. Then the client says, мы хотим купить. Divan is in parentheses. And kresla, meaning plural armchairs, is also in parentheses. Okay? Are there any numbers? Are we saying 2 couches, 3? Nope. And guess what? Divan is masculine, so it doesn't need to change in accusative case. And kresla is a inanimate plural, also doesn't need to change. So guess what? We lucked out here. We just say мы хотим купить диван и кресло, 2 armchairs. Remember, the original of armchair was кресло, neuter. So that's why we're seeing an а as a plural. Вот, дальше. Да, у нас есть 2. Oh, crap. Now we're getting numbers. Are you ready? Get your genitive singular tools out. Here we go. У нас 2, and then we have couches and 3 armchairs. So he says, да, у нас 2 дивана и 3 кресла. Вот так. So notice the кресла looks exactly like the plural up above. Вот. Then we want to say, what color are the couches? You remember that phrase that was there? Какого диваны какого цвета? Диваны какого цвета, right? Maybe you really care about what color things are in your house. Okay, so диваны какого цвета? Диваны какого цвета? And then he wants to say, we have 1 red and 1 white. Let's assume he's talking about the couches. I didn't specify here. So how would you say we have 1 red couch and 1 white couch? У нас один красный. We don't need to add back in диван. У нас один красный диван и один белый. Okay. Then you say, we also want a lamp and a beautiful painting. Okay, we're going back to what case? When you're doing something to it and it's a feminine singular, what case do we get? Ooh, dig up your notes on accusative case. Here we go. Do you remember how to do it? So we're going to say, we want a lamp and a beautiful painting. Let's try it out. Лампа и красивая картина. Here we go. Мы тоже хотим лампу и красивую картину. Oh my goodness, that accusative case, sure enough, is coming in handy again. Вот. Продавец says, у нас есть, we have 1 big lamp and 1 small. Okay, so this isn't necessarily getting a case, but our number 1 has to get a feminine gender. How do we do that? У нас есть, and by the way, the есть probably would get left out. У нас одна большая лампа и одна маленькая лампа. Да? Oh my goodness, you can't even see. I'm so sorry. Okay, so you say, у нас одна большая и одна маленькая лампа. Да? And then you want to say, what a big or what a comfy bed. Okay, so do you remember how to make those exclamations? What a, wow, you're going to have to go way back in time to nominative case. And this doesn't change. Какая уютная кровать. Да, какая уютная кровать. And then this is really sad, but you're going to tell them, our daughter doesn't have a bed. Okay, so we need to put наша дочка. I went easy on you and just did дочка, which isn't going to do anything irregular here. Okay, and then you don't have a bed. Remember, when you don't have something, it gets genitive. Here we go. Наша дочка needs to go into genitive singular. Наша дочки. Okay, if this wasn't дочка, like the kind of loving term for it, it would be у нашей дочери. But I went easy on you and we're just going I put that wrong. У нашей дочки нет. What's кровать going to do? What do feminines with a мягкий знак on the end do? Do you remember? Нет кровати. Бедняшечка. And then the где она спит? Where does she sleep? and you say na. What's that phrase for on the floor? Do you remember? Na. This is back to prepositional with those irregular u endings. На полу. Где она спит? На полу. And then the client says, Нет, с нами в. So with us in our bed. How would we do that? Guess what, guys? This is going to look exactly like genitive case. Isn't it crazy? I told you, remember, they start to run out of endings for feminine things. So they're just like, let's just recycle those prepositional ones again. I don't know. I can't think of anything. Let's just use the same ones we've already been using. So it's going to do this same thing. Нашей, like we had up here with дочки. В нашей кровати, just like up here with genitive. В нашей кровати. С нами в нашей кровати. So hopefully you went home with a fully furnished house and your daughter no longer has to interrupt your sleep. I have never been the type of person to be able to have a child in the bed with me because I wouldn't sleep. So, but good for you if that works for you. Хорошо. Our last little bit. Were you paying attention today? Here we go. How would you say we have one big lamp? У нас одна большая лампа. How about this one? We have two couches. У нас два дивана. Так. How about this one? Our daughter doesn't have a bed. У нашей, and you can either say дочки or дочери. Здесь у нашей дочки нет кровати. У нашей дочки нет кровати. Although in spoken speech you might hear у нашей дочки нету кровати, which is like разговорный вариант, so like colloquial. And then how would you ask what color is something? You're literally saying of what color. So how would you say that? Какого цвета? Какого цвета диван? Диван какого цвета? And then how would we say two beds? We just saw the version of bed that we need here again. Две кровати. And we said две because кровать is feminine. See, now you know why it's so important to know the original gender of everything, because it affects everything everywhere in the whole language. It is at the very foundation of everything. So if you need to revisit the chapter and all the videos on nominative case, I highly recommend it, because once we get into genitive plural, it's going to be super important that you know the original endings of all of those words. Хорошо, это все на сегодня. Увидимся завтра на следующем уроке. Пока-пока.